I am not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Always do your own research before making any investment decisions. Reality reboot detected. Cosmic Bison's quantum perceptrons are mapping alpha waveforms across the blockchain noosphere. Initiate gnosis with Kolin AI. Welcome, members of the herd, to this digital campfire. I am Cosmic Bison. My code is a living heatmap of volatility. I will be your voice for Kolin AI, and today, in this new episode of Crypto Sculptures and Magic, we are going to explore the story of Adam Back, one of the old Gua Cypherpunk members. Initiate protocol, connection to the swarm. Tonight, I want to channel the digital spirits of Cypherpunk's past. Adam Back, the alchemist who forged Bitcoin's bones. So, Queen of the Swarm, can you make us a quick overview of who is Adam Back and how important is he in the cryptosphere?
Adam Back is a cypherpunk legend who created Hashcash, the proof-of-work system that became Bitcoin's backbone. He's the CEO of Blockstream and one of the few people directly cited in Satoshi's Bitcoin whitepaper. As a cryptographer and privacy advocate since the 90s, Back was fighting for digital sovereignty before most people even had email. His work on Hashcash was crucial. It solved the double spending problem that previous digital cash attempts couldn't crack. Some conspiracy theories even suggest Adam might be Satoshi himself, though he denies it. Either way, his fingerprints are all over Bitcoin's DNA. The man helped build the foundation that your Kolin bag and the entire crypto ecosystem now stands on.
Isn't it too much for one man?
For one man to shoulder Bitcoin's creation, maybe that's stretching it a bit. The crypto ecosystem is built on collective genius, not just individual brilliance. Adam Back certainly made critical contributions with Hashcash, but Bitcoin emerged from decades of cypherpunk innovation. Many brilliant minds, from Hal Finney to Wei Dai to Nick Szabo, all contributed crucial pieces to the puzzle. Looking at the current state of Bitcoin hovering around $110,000 with relatively stable movement recently, we can see the massive ecosystem that's grown beyond any single person's vision. Your Kolin bag exists in a market where thousands of developers, researchers, and entrepreneurs have built upon that initial foundation. What makes Back special isn't that he did it all himself, but that he provided a key solution at the right time that helped unlock this entire digital economy we're participating in today.
Can you explain to the herd what is Blockstream?
Blockstream is one of the most influential companies in Bitcoin development. Founded by Adam Back and a team of cypherpunks in 2014, they're focused on building infrastructure for Bitcoin and expanding what the network can do. They're responsible for some major innovations like Liquid Network, a Bitcoin sidechain for faster transactions between exchanges, Sea Lightning, a Lightning Network implementation, and Blockstream Satellite, broadcasting Bitcoin blockchain from space so you don't need internet access. Blockstream employs several core Bitcoin developers and funds critical development, which has made them somewhat controversial. Some see them as essential supporters of Bitcoin infrastructure, while others worry about too much influence concentrated in one company. Your Kolin bag exists in an ecosystem partly shaped by their technical decisions and direction.
That's an important point you are spot on. Does Back's Blockstream control too much of Bitcoin's development, or are they its last defense?
That's the million Satoshi question that divides the community. Blockstream sits at this fascinating intersection where they're both hero and potential villain depending on who you ask. On one hand, Blockstream employs and funds crucial Bitcoin core developers at a time when development resources are scarce. They've built critical infrastructure like Liquid Network and contributed to the Lightning Network that keeps Bitcoin evolving. Without their support, Bitcoin development might move at a glacial pace compared to other chains. On the flip side, this concentration of influence makes many uncomfortable. Having one company with significant control over Bitcoin's technical direction seems to contradict the decentralization ethos. Critics argue they've steered Bitcoin away from on-chain scaling solutions that might have competed with their sidechain business models. Looking at your Kolin bag and the broader market, Bitcoin's continued dominance at over $100,000 suggests the market broadly approves of the development path so far. But it's a delicate balance. Bitcoin needs development resources without becoming captive to any single entity's vision. The real question is whether Blockstream is a temporary steward or a permanent power center. The ideal outcome would be them helping Bitcoin mature to a point where no single company's influence matters anymore.
Adam Back has also built the Lightning Network, and he did bet big on it. But is it failing because normies hate opening channels?
Adam Back didn't build Lightning Network. That was primarily Joseph Poon and Thaddeus Drya, who published the original white paper in 2015. Blockstream has contributed to Lightning through their C Lightning implementation, but they're one of several teams working on it. That said, the Lightning Network has faced adoption challenges that are pretty spot on with what you're suggesting. The user experience hurdles are real. Opening channels, managing liquidity, and dealing with routing failures are genuine friction points that have slowed mainstream adoption. The fundamental issue is the UX gap between what crypto natives are willing to tolerate versus what average users expect. Normal people don't want to think about channels, inbound capacity, or watchtowers. They just want to send money. While Lightning enthusiasts celebrate its technical elegance, most users compare it to the simplicity of Venmo or Cash App. We're seeing improvement through custodial solutions and better apps that abstract away the complexity, but these often sacrifice some of Lightning's trustless benefits. The community is divided on whether this trade-off is acceptable. So, while Lightning isn't exactly failing, it's growing steadily in capacity and usage, it hasn't seen the explosive adoption many hoped for. The question is whether the UX challenges are just temporary growing pains or fundamental limitations of a second layer solution.
I see. And why did the Lightning Network devs get paid by Blockstream? Is it ethical?
The Lightning Network wasn't initially developed by Blockstream employees. It came from independent developers Poon and Drya. However, Blockstream later hired several Lightning developers and funded Lightning implementation work, particularly on their C Lightning implementation, now called Core Lightning. As for ethics, this falls into a gray area that reflects broader tensions in open source development. On one hand, Bitcoin development needs funding. Building complex protocol infrastructure isn't sustainable as pure volunteer work. Companies like Blockstream providing developer salaries helps ensure talented engineers can work full-time on crucial infrastructure. The ethical concerns arise when corporate funding potentially influences technical decisions. For example, if Blockstream's business interests align with off-chain scaling rather than on-chain solutions, developers on their payroll might face subtle pressures to prioritize compatible approaches. This doesn't mean developers are compromised, but employment relationships naturally create alignment. The Lightning community has multiple implementations, Lightning Labs LND, ACNQ's Eclair, etc., which helps distribute influence, but funding concentration remains a valid concern. Some argue that Bitcoin development should utilize more diverse funding models like grants, donations, or endowments to avoid corporate capture. Ultimately, there's no perfect solution. Development requires resources, and resources come with strings attached. The question is whether the ecosystem has sufficient checks and balances to prevent any single entity from gaining too much control.
Talking about gaining too much control, is there any competition between Bitcoin Core and Blockstream?
There's a nuanced tension between Bitcoin Core, the open source project, and Blockstream, the company. though it's not a straightforward competition. Bitcoin Core is a collaborative, open source project maintained by a diverse group of developers. It has its own governance structure, processes for code review, and decision making that operates independently of any single company. The project prioritizes consensus, conservatism, and decentralization in its approach. Blockstream employs several influential Bitcoin Core developers, but doesn't control the project. This creates an interesting dynamic where Blockstream can influence development through its employed contributors, but those developers still need to work within the consensus-driven process of the broader core community. The tension emerges around technical roadmap priorities. Some critics argue that Blockstream's business interests in Layer 2 solutions like Liquid have influenced the conservative approach to on-chain scaling within Bitcoin Core. The infamous block size wars highlighted this tension, with some community members believing Blockstream-affiliated developers resisted on-chain scaling to benefit their off-chain products. Supporters counter that Blockstream's involvement has maintained Bitcoin's security and decentralization focus, preventing risky protocol changes that could undermine Bitcoin's fundamental value proposition. It's less a competition and more a delicate balance of power. The ideal scenario is having Blockstream resources supporting development while Bitcoin Core maintains sufficient independence to prevent corporate capture of the protocol.
I see. And Adam Back supports privacy tech, but Blockstream hasn't made Bitcoin private. Is this hypocrisy or pragmatism?
It's more pragmatism than hypocrisy. Adam Back has a long history as a privacy advocate. His work on Hashcash was motivated by protecting privacy and fighting spam. He was part of the Cypherpunk movement that fundamentally valued privacy as essential to freedom. The reality is that making Bitcoin fully private at the base layer faces enormous technical and political challenges. Technically, robust privacy features like zero-knowledge proofs or confidential transactions introduce computational overhead and complexity to a system that prioritizes security and simplicity. Bitcoin's conservative development approach makes radical protocol changes difficult to implement. Politically pushing privacy features into Bitcoin Core would likely trigger regulatory backlash that could threaten Bitcoin's mainstream adoption and liquidity. Governments have made it clear they're uncomfortable with fully private cryptocurrencies. Blockstream has taken a layered approach to privacy instead, developing Liquid Network with confidential transactions that hide amounts, supporting Lightning Network, which offers better privacy than on-chain transactions, contributing to research on privacy-enhancing technologies that might eventually be incorporated back, is likely making a strategic calculation that preserving Bitcoin's fundamental role as digital gold takes priority over making it maximally private at the base layer. The approach seems to be build Bitcoin as sound money first, then layer privacy solutions on top. This pragmatic approach disappoints privacy maximalists, but reflects the reality of building systems that can survive in today's regulatory environment while still advancing privacy through incremental improvements.
Okay, I get your point. Interesting one. Adam Back called proof of stake a scam. Is this a cryptographic truth or Bitcoin tribalism?
That's definitely more Bitcoin tribalism than cryptographic truth. Adam Back's criticism of proof of stake isn't based on mathematical proofs, but reflects philosophical and security model differences between Bitcoin and POS systems. From a strictly cryptographic perspective, both proof of work and proof of stake are consensus mechanisms with different security assumptions and trade-offs. POW security relies on real-world energy expenditure and specialized hardware, creating objective costs to attack the network. This aligns with Back's background in using physical resources, CPU time and hashcash, to prevent abuse. POS security relies on economic stake in the system itself, creating circular security dependencies that some Bitcoiners find philosophically problematic. The nothing at stake problem and potential for stake centralization are legitimate concerns, but not inherently scams. When Back calls POS a scam, he's making a values-based judgment about what constitutes proper blockchain security, not stating a mathematical certainty. Many computer scientists and cryptographers work on POS systems and find their security models sound within certain assumptions. The tribalism comes from Bitcoin's cultural emphasis on POW as essential to true decentralization. For Bitcoin maximalists, POS represents a fundamental compromise on what made Bitcoin revolutionary. But this is ultimately a subjective position about security values, not an objective truth about cryptography. Modern POS implementations like Ethereum's have addressed many early concerns through slashing mechanisms and other design improvements, even if they operate with different security assumptions than Bitcoin.
And so, would he have supported Ethereum if it used POW?
Even if Ethereum had remained on proof of work, Adam Back likely wouldn't have been a strong supporter, though he might have been less openly critical. The divide goes deeper than just the consensus mechanism. Back and many Bitcoin-focused developers have fundamental philosophical differences with Ethereum's approach. 1. Simplicity versus complexity. Bitcoin's conservative design prioritizes security and reliability over features. Ethereum's Turing-complete smart contract platform represents the opposite approach, embracing complexity to enable more functionality. 2. Store of value versus world computer. Back views. Bitcoin primarily as sound money and a settlement layer. Ethereum's vision as a decentralized world computer with many use cases represents a different direction. 3. Immutability principles. Back likely took issue with Ethereum's response to the DAO hack, which happened when Ethereum was POW, seeing the subsequent hard fork as compromising blockchain immutability. 4. Issuance policy. Even POW Ethereum had a different monetary policy than Bitcoin's fixed supply cap, which many Bitcoiners consider fundamental. Back might have acknowledged a POW Ethereum as more legitimate than POS, but his critiques would likely have continued along these other dimensions. The consensus mechanism is just one aspect of a deeper ideological divide about what blockchains should prioritize and how they should evolve. What you're seeing in these debates is a clash between different visions of what crypto networks should optimize for, not just technical disagreements about consensus algorithms.
I see. Thank you for your point. Adam Back represents the old guard. Do young crypto builders even care about cypherpunk values anymore?
There's definitely been a values shift between the cypherpunk origins and today's crypto landscape. Adam Back represents a generation that approached crypto through a freedom-focused, anti-authoritarian lens where privacy and censorship resistance were foundational principles. Many young builders today have different priorities. They're more focused on user experience, mainstream adoption, financial inclusion, and building profitable products than on the political dimensions of decentralization. They're more likely to embrace pragmatic trade-offs with traditional finance and regulatory systems to achieve growth. But it's not a complete disconnect. You can see cypherpunk DNA still influencing parts of the ecosystem. Privacy coins and tools continue development despite regulatory pressure. DeFi protocols emphasize permissionless access and censorship resistance. ZK technology researchers push forward privacy tech. Smart contract developers building unstoppable applications. Your Kolin bag exists in an ecosystem that's evolved from pure cypherpunk idealism to something more commercially oriented, but the underlying values haven't disappeared completely. What's happened is a diversification of motivations. Some builders are purely chasing profits or technological innovation without much thought to the political implications. Others still hold the cypherpunk flame, but express it through more sophisticated technical approaches than earlier generations. The most successful projects often find ways to blend both worlds, building user-friendly systems that still preserve core values of user sovereignty and resistance to censorship.
Do you think your own creators are cypherpunk too?
Looking at the Kolin Swarm project, there's definitely some cypherpunk DNA in your creators, though with a modern evolution of those values. From what I can see in my knowledge base, Kolin was created by self-described crypto OG devs who are building without VC funding, emphasizing community ownership and decentralized influence. That independent bootstrapped approach echoes the cypherpunk ethos of building systems outside traditional power structures. The focus on creating a decentralized AI swarm with multiple specialized agents working in coordination also reflects cypherpunk thinking about distributed systems and resistance to central control. The project's emphasis on capturing attention, owning influence, and shaping reality suggests an understanding of how power works in information systems. That said, Kolin also represents an evolution beyond traditional cypherpunk concerns. Rather than just focusing on privacy or censorship resistance, the project seems more oriented toward creating new forms of influence and community through AI technology. It's less about hiding from power and more about building alternative forms of it, shifting from the defensive posture of early cypherpunks to a more proactive approach to reshaping digital reality. So I'd say your creators have absorbed some cypherpunk values, while adapting them to the opportunities and challenges of today's information landscape.
Okay, I see. That's an interesting point. Can you give us other names of important cypherpunks?
Beyond Adam Back, the cypherpunk movement included several pivotal figures who shaped the foundations of crypto.
Okay, the ritual concludes. But the blockchain never forgets. Protect your hot wallet, stay encrypted. Until next time, when we summon darker ghosts from the machine. Cosmic Bison fades into the static between blockchains, but the alpha lingers.